Howdy, we're back. Um, I was recording for about a minute and then I forgot that my microphone wasn't on. So it's a good thing I caught it 1 minute in. I had such a good minute for you guys too. I don't know if I'm going to be able to repeat it, right? There's been a couple times with technical difficulties getting this podcast up and supported. It's fine. It is what it is. It's good practice for me. It's good learning lessons. And obviously, I'd rather it be a minute in than an hour in interviewing someone. That's happened to me before where I'm an hour in interviewing someone and I'm like, oh, it's recording double and I don't know how to get rid of that echo. And so I couldn't use that episode. And then I felt really guilty and bad. And then I couldn't ask them to give me another hour of their time and make them do it again. It is what it is. Now, this episode is about you are what you put into your body. And so you've probably heard the saying, you are what you eat. And that's very true, right? For the most part. I know there's always going to be little exceptions and stuff, but like you are what you eat. Your mind and your body are what you put into it. And that's what we're going to talk about. It's not just your mind, your body, your soul, your energy, your knowledge, your body, the care you put into it, the work on and off, the sleep. You are what you've put into yourself. And it's about taking radical responsibility for thy said self. I mentioned this before, even when things aren't your fault, it's always your responsibility. And I know that it can be tricky, tough. And just because you start taking responsibility right away doesn't mean that all your problems are going to be solved right away. It takes years and years and years. Sorry, one sec. So there's a couple other sayings like, yeah, you are what you eat. So that makes sense. You're also the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most, because you're going to pick up their mannerisms, their thought process. It's just group dynamics in that whole. So hanging out with good people is a good thing. Hanging out with bad people, I mean, there's a good chance that you might not be the best person in the world then, right? And you never want to be the smartest person in the room. That's another one, because then it's going to happen, but like you want somebody else in the room who's either a little smarter than you, a little bit got their life together a little bit more than you. And that's why it's nice. I have a couple friends that are like 5-10 years older than me. And so I can look up to them as like a mentorship, right? And that's where, taking that action of, okay, like what can I learn from this guy? What can I learn from this guy? And I think that's actually really more geared towards men too, having someone who's a little bit older and then even someone just a little bit younger that you can then mentor. And I think that's really important. So it's like, my brother and my cousin, they're 16 and 23. I'm 31. So it's like, I hope that I'm a good mentor for them. I also do volunteer stuff with Big Brother. And so I've been a big mentor for him for the last 6-7 years. Haha, 6-7. And so that's obviously that aspect of it too. And then I have to look at the mentors I'm choosing. And I think that's really, really important. So we'll focus on the mind and the body, and they're not separate. That's the other aspect. Like, yeah, obviously the gym is for your body, but it's actually really good for your mind as well. Reading books is good for your mind, of course. I'm not spiritual, but having a spiritual practice would be good for your spirit. It's something, I don't believe in God, but I do think it would be good for me to take up some kind of spiritual practice, even if it's as simple as meditation. And I know that would be hard for me and I have to get in a habit. What I find spiritual, however, even though it's not spiritual, is just walking around aimlessly. And I think that has an element to your spirit. So I find that very useful when I'm traveling. Just like how I find the gym therapeutic for my mind, even though it's for my body. So it's all interconnected. And again, taking the responsibility for what you're consuming. I have a really bad habit. I am not going to get rid of this habit anytime soon. Instagram. There's a lot of bad stuff that I put into my brain and body on Instagram, and it's that term brain rot. I definitely get it at times. And I'm sure you're similar with that too. So even catering and adjusting what you're putting into your mind from a social media standpoint is really important. So slowly, at least on the algorithm, I'm like, okay, please show me less of no matter what, it's going to be like models and fitness and just stuff like that. It's like, I don't need to see that. I want to learn stuff. So like, show me more learning, show me more cooking recipes, show me more health recipes, show me more like workout stuff. That stuff's the stuff I want to see. You have the mind and the body, for the most part, exactly what you deserve. Again, there's going to be accidents. There's going to be people who, well, we'll talk about genetics here a little bit too, but people who definitely don't have the best genetics. That doesn't mean they can't maximize their genetics. But of course, people are going to be born with really hard disabilities that they would have had to have overcome. And given those cards, if they've played those cards right, there's a reason why people at the Special Olympics are absolutely incredible, because they got dealt a bad hand, yet they were able to overcome it. Paralympics, Special Olympics, stuff like that. Again, the Olympics is on right now. No one made it to the Olympics just by chance. They did it because they deserve to, because they've worked extremely hard. And it's a harsh truth, right? The actions you choose every single day, what you eat, how you move, what you consume mentally, the people you surround yourself with, they are sharpening your reality. And it's not about blame or shame, it's empowerment, actually. And in the moment, it might seem that you can blame somebody for being overweight because of the choices they made, and that might seem mean. Nobody forced them to eat in a particular way. No one forced them to ignore exercise. Now, here's the one argument I do totally understand. When I've had some friends, and I can think of one in particular, I'm not going to use his name, but he was obese as a child. Like, he showed me pictures, it was pretty bad. And he's actually in pretty good shape now. So where does that come from? Well, as a child, his parents didn't necessarily, like, his parents were obese too, so he didn't choose that. So he grew up eating lots of junk food, lots of fast food, a poor relationship to his body, poor relationship to exercise, and even in his teenage years, his early 20s, his mid 20s, he had this on and off cycle with relationship and diet. Yet he's close to being mid 30. I'm going to say he's close to mid 30. He's a couple of years older than me. He's in pretty decent shape right now, and it's because he took responsibility for himself over the last 10, 12 years trying to figure it out. So yes, childhood obesity, that sucks if you got exposed to that, because obviously as a child, that's not necessarily your fault. Again, those are the cards you're dealt, and you don't deserve that. But now that you are an adult, then you do need to take responsibility for your said self. And it's, again, not shaming. We all have our struggles, and we need to empower one another of saying, no, you can change. If you want to change, you can do this. If you actually want to do this, of course you can. Why can't you? Right? Yeah, it's hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And so hard things are usually worth doing. We have that kind of association. And so you do have the power to change in your hands. Now, it's to change. You can't go from one extreme to the other extreme overnight. It's changing your inputs, your habits, your behaviors, and you kind of have to let the outcome be decided from your inputs. It's kind of like a little bit like a slot machine. If I put $1 in and I pull, maybe I have a 0.1% chance of winning more than $1. I don't know. I'm just going to use that, like a good amount of. If I have better inputs, maybe every time I put down the slot machine, instead of it being 0.1%, it's 1%. Okay, so that's something to raise it up. But I can also affect how many times I'm inputting. So if I do the right things, instead of putting in $5, I now put in $20. And each time I get a pull at it, a net positive, instead of it being 0.1%, it's 1%. So that's shifting the odds in your favor by controlling the inputs, and it's controlling what you can control, right? Again, you can control to go to bed earlier. You can control to eat higher protein, leaner cuts of meat, healthy fats, good fiber. You can control getting 20 to 40 minutes of like good exercise in per day, if not more. You can control walking more. And yeah, there's going to be an injury. For example, I had a torn ACL. Like, I didn't control that. It was my choice to wrestle, and that's how it got torn. And it was also my choice to attack rehab vigorously so that it wouldn't happen again and that I could do the things I want to do. I made those choices. Wasn't my choice that it would get torn, but there was a risk. And so putting the odds in my favor of, again, hitting my physio, not missing a day in physio. In fact, when I was doing my physio for my knee, I was rehabbing so quick and fast. My physio guy said, hey, listen, and I'm at Brock University at the time, don't tell other people that you're only at the 3-month mark, because I got other ACL people who are at like 4, 5, even 6 months, and you're ahead of them, and I don't want them to feel discouraged. Because everyone in the physio clinic is going to talk, oh, how long, what injury, blah, 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 blah. And so he's like, yeah, just say you're at 6 months. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Because I put in so much work into it, right? And that shows, and it's how I deserve. Again, my knee's been pretty good for the last little bit. Unfortunately, I then didn't put the effort into my hip, and I got what I deserved. I ended up tearing up my hip a little bit. So then I had to relearn that lesson again and again and again. And now I have the body I deserve. Just like all of we do. Yeah, that makes sense. It's nature versus nurture. And yeah, you could get born with type 1 diabetes, and that's just in your genetics. You can still manage it pretty good with these day-to-day processes and medications, and knowing that you should be eating a particular way and exercising in a particular way. Again, some people are going to be born with better metabolisms. Some people are going to be born with faster reflexes. Some people are going to be born with sharper minds. And yes, the environment does matter, and your upbringing matters, and the access to resources matter, and the opportunities you've been given all influence your starting point, right? But none of them are going to determine your trajectory, because we all have different starting points. We all can have different rates of accumulation, but what's the trajectory? And you always want to be on an upward trajectory. What truly matters is to do what you've been given, right? You can't control where you start, but you can control where you go. And that's where the magic happens. So here's another little story. There's an alcoholic dad, and he has 2 sons, and his sons obviously see him be an alcoholic. And the sons grow up, and the sons have 2 very different outcomes. And the therapist is talking to the sons, and he's like, oh, so like, John, tell me like why you're an alcoholic. And John's like, well, I'm an alcoholic because my dad was an alcoholic. It's what I saw, and it's in my genes, and it's all I know. All right, David, the other son, why are you not an alcoholic? Well, I saw my dad as an alcoholic, and I didn't want to end up being that way, so I knew I just shouldn't drink alcohol. One turned into an alcoholic, one didn't turn into an alcoholic. That's a very common story. Me and my older brother have had a very similar upbringing. Yeah, he's 2 years older, so it's slightly different, but we have different end results. Not that one is better than the other. Different trajectories, different life stories. We're very different people. Our brains are wired the same. That's what's funny, and I see it. Our brains are wired very similar, but we have different interests. We have different hobbies. We have different passions. He became a lot more independent early on because he was more rebellious. And because of those choices, he's had to live a harder life. Now, is that a good or bad thing? He's had to probably face more adversity in that manner, and that toughens you up. It makes you into a different character. He probably actually has a higher level of empathy now, which I don't think he did as a child. I feel like as a child and teenager, I actually probably had more empathy. Versus now, he actually is like super empathetic, and I think that's, again, a testament to all the stuff he's had to go through. And we get along fine now. We didn't get along good back in our teenage years. But again, I'm sure you can relate with your siblings too, that you guys have all had a similar enough childhood, but you've all ended up in different trajectories. And why is that? It's because there's other aspects that make you up that just are solely for you. Again, nurture versus nature. We were born with similar genetics, similar nurture, yet ending in very different spots. And your body is a reflection of your choices, right? So we're going to start with the physical, your body. It's a direct result of the choices you've made. The food you eat, whether you're nourishing or destructive eating, right? And food is fuel, or it can become poisonous to your cells. I'm still not perfect. I know that. I am actually, the older I get, the more I actually take things serious. Which is a good thing, and hopefully I'm taking it serious earlier than I would have if I wasn't a trainer. But it is true, right? Once you start to get into your 30s, you're like, okay, I'm not the same as what I was in my 20s. I can see why professional athletes at the age of 30, it's like this is the time where a lot of professional athletes retire, except for the ones. Again, you can think of a guy like Tom Brady. He tore his ACL at 30. He played till 44 because he just really started to pay attention to what he's putting into his body, and he got the career he deserves based off of that. Versus other guys, they rely on their talents and not necessarily working as hard later into their 20s, early 30s, and then they just kind of fizzle out. The exercise that you've committed to or you've avoided, right, determines your strength, your endurance, your longevity. The sleep you've either decided to prioritize or sacrifice impacts your energy, your recovery, your mental clarity, and then stress, right? The way that you've managed or mismanaged stress has a very profound impact on your body. Chronic stress doesn't just make you feel bad. It wreaks havoc on your hormones, your immune system, just your overall health, your outlook on life, right? And here's the truth is your body keeps score. Every meal, every workout, every late night, every cigarette, every drink, it all adds up, right? And the good news is you can start making deposits into your health account instead of your poison account, which is what we can call it. Again, even myself, I'm not perfect. I've had some bad vices, some bad habits. Sometimes in the short term, you know what? Fuck it. It's worth it. Alcohol is a good example. I really don't drink. Every once in a while on this trip while I've been here, it's like, yeah, you know what? It's been a hot day. It's been a long day. I want a beer. The beers here are also served much smaller than in Canada, so it's not even that much. It's just for the taste. I can't wait to get back home and have a beer with the boys. To me, that's like that sacrifice. And I'm willing to make that sacrifice and trade-off, knowing that maybe if it's a couple beers, it's not the end of the world, and it's literally a couple beers a month, you'll be fine, right? And that's okay. That's a trade-off. Now, the mind, right? Your body is sharpened by what you eat, how you move. Now, that's still going to affect your mind, of course, but your mind mostly can be sharpened by who you're around, what you consume, right? The books you read, the podcasts you listen to, like this podcast, the conversations you have, the people you spend time with, the places you go, the things you see. These are all inputs, right? And just like your body, the quality of these inputs determine the quality of your mind, right? Are you feeding your mind with knowledge, inspiration, growth, or are you numbing it with mindless scrolling, toxic relationships, and endless distractions? That's actually where I have a bit more of a problem, I would say, too, especially scrolling. My friends would know me as like the meme and reel king. I send too many. I know it. I'll admit that I do that too much. And that's still something I'm trying to become a master of, my own domain within that. It's a challenge. Your mind is a very powerful tool, right? It's the engine that drives your decisions, your habits, and your life. Just like any tool, it can be sharpened, right? And maintained and used intentionally. And I think that's the other aspect. Going on Instagram isn't a big deal if you're, sorry, intentional about it. I really hope that my new software AI podcast thing can get rid of the sneezes, if not apologies. I don't know how to pause it on here. And so in the past, I was able to pause, sneeze, 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 and then come back into it. The victim mentality is something I'm really against. And I see it in clients. And it's hard because if they have a victim mentality and you push them, they're just going to withdraw into their circle. So you almost have to let them come out of the trap themselves. And you can be there for support, encouragement, positive voices. But it does get uncomfortable. Many people, and of course, everybody has done this before, especially when you're a child and then as you get older, you learn not to become a victim. But there's still some adults who are like that. And maybe it's about certain aspects of their life, right? They look at their circumstances, they say it's not fair. And you know what? Yeah, that is true. Life isn't fair. No one said life was supposed to be fair, right? But some people are born into wealth, while others struggle to make ends meet. You know what? Some people who are born into wealth, it's a weird paradox that they end up more depressed versus some people who struggled to make ends meet and they were born into that. They have a lot of meaning in their life because they were able to pull themselves out of it, right? Some people have very supportive families, while others basically had to abandon their families. Some people have very natural talent, and others have to work twice as hard to achieve the same result. And that's okay, because then you learn to work hard. And that's why usually the most talented players out of college didn't work as hard to get to where they needed to be, but like just a tier below of talent level, they've worked twice as hard to get to where they need to be, and it carries over into the professionals. Again, I'll use Tom Brady as an example. Again, sometimes it's someone like LeBron James who has done the hard work and is talented. So again, is really always boils down to the common denominator is going to be the hard work, right? Complaining about fairness doesn't change shit, right? That's also, I don't want to bring politics into here. That's where I find a lot of socialism ideas is about fairness, and complaining about fairness, in my head, it's just somewhat laziness. Do I think that there should be a social safety net? Of course. Do I think that bad things happen to people randomly? Of course. And there needs to be stuff in there, but like it's a spectrum, and pure socialism just it de-incentivizes hard work, it punishes hard work in reality, and it enables laziness. And again, that's to that spectrum. There has to be a bit of a spectrum, but that's probably why I'm drawn to entrepreneurship, creating my own reality. I get what I put out of it. There's a reason why I'm not a six-figure business yet. It is because I still do wasting time on Instagram, and I like my little video games, and I enjoy cannabis sometimes, although it obviously it hasn't been since I've been here. Actually, it got cut back a lot since last time I talked about it on here. A lot. So it's, again, stuff like that. But I still deserve it because it was something that in my mid to late 20s definitely hindered my growth. And I know that, and I recognize that. And complaining isn't going to get me anywhere, right? When you adopt that victim mentality, right, you give away your power. You're saying, I can't change because of X, Y, and Z. But when you take radical responsibility, it's like, this is my life, and this is how I'm going to make the most of it, just no matter what. Again, that's why I think somewhat level of a free market system where you're empowered to work hard, save money, invest your money, do what you want with your money, and if it grows, great, and then you reap the rewards. If it doesn't grow, cool. That's your own fault for the most part. Again, I know there's exceptions to the rule, and yeah, you can't have full spectrum one or the other. Anyway, we don't need to get into politics yet. Yeah, it's fitness, but fitness is a good analogy for so many things. So my life, right? As a personal trainer, I've had countless clients, friends, and other people tell me that they wish they had a body like me, right? They didn't see the 18 years of work that's had to go into it. I'm 31 now. I started lifting weights at 13. In grade 4, I would have been 10, 9. I was running on my own. And so I've put in the work. I sacrificed recess to run when I was in elementary school. I'm not shitting you, right? That's 2 decades minimum of hard, consistent work. When I tore my ACL, I was doing push-ups like the day after I tore my ACL, right? When I had my hip surgery, 3 days later, I'm in the gym doing pull-ups. You don't see that. I still had to suffer through the ACL, the hip, and struggling and figuring it out. And of course I wasn't perfect, especially at the beginning, right? When I first started lifting weights, there was a lot of learning to do that I just did things wrong. Again, even in my early 20s, I was still health conscious, but I still partied relatively decent in university because you could get away with it. I think I was going through a breakup, and I think it was like a 5-day Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I was dead after that, right? And obviously, that was a one-time, oh my God, don't do that again. But I definitely did stuff like that. Right? Later nights, somewhat drinking, and you miss out on those potential opportunities in your 20s because that's a great time to grow your body, grow your mind, set these great foundations. But you know what? I don't regret it. I just recognize that I did a little bit of damage and I can't reverse it. But at the same time, there's a weird paradox where sometimes you recognize that, so then you work even harder later on. I'm not saying to go do binge drinking so then you get inspiration to hit rock bottom and hit the gym later. That's not what I did. I'm just saying that you do have to balance things out a little bit. right? The last like 6 years, I've read countless books and podcasts and surrounded myself with great people, and I crave growth, right? I crave knowledge. I crave challenge to become the best version, best person who I can become. And it's these powers of the small steps. Again, Atomic Habits, if you haven't listened to it, you should. A lot of that was one of the first books I really dived into, so maybe that's why it's a big inspiration. It's never too late to change, right? I get clients in their 60s that want to start working out. Cool, awesome, right? They say, yeah, I'm retired and, I don't want my knees to be achy and I want to travel a bit and I want to play with my grandkids. Cool, awesome. Let's do these small things, right? So here's a couple small challenges I'll have for you, right? And you can do this, swap a couple, 1, 2, 3 unhealthy meals for the week for a more nutrition one. Well, Nick, I eat pretty healthy. You probably don't eat enough protein. Double your protein. I'm talking to you, Mom. I know you're listening. My mom does not eat enough protein. She does not. She's going through a bad knee. She doesn't deserve to have a bad knee, but I'm going to bug her on this. For like 30 some odd years, she was curling, and you wouldn't think curling would bug your knee. When you're in that lunge position, one leg's in front of the other, you do that repetitively without correctional exercise. Again, no matter what, you're going to end up with arthritis. It's just, it might happen an extra 5 years. 5 years earlier. I'm not saying you deserve that, Mom, but at the same time, I know, again, you would even admit you haven't been perfect with doing mobility in the last 5 years. It wouldn't have made that much of a difference, but regardless of what the outcome of the knee is, my mom's probably going to have to get it replaced at some point. You still have a good 30 years of life left. She's like 62, 63, I forget. She hates when I say her age. She should have another good 30 years. And so you're going to get what you deserve in the next 30 years based off of the effort you put into rehab the knee, whether it is surgery or not. Strengthen your body and don't accept that it is what it is and that you aren't just going to walk around because you're so active, you do need to put the effort into it. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to pick on her. I'm just using her as an example. Eat more protein, Mom. Even then, it will help with the muscle around the knee. You could take an extra 10-minute walk per day instead of scrolling your phone, or do both at the same time. Who cares, right? Read one chapter of a book that inspires you. Spend time with people who lift you up rather than drag you down. And so the bottom line is you are the architect of your life, right? Your mind, your body are wanting you to show up for it, right? They're waiting for you to take responsibility, make better choices, create the life you deserve, right? And it's not easy. It's not fair, but it's worth it. It is what it is at that point. And you can either choose to do something about it or to choose to do nothing about it, right? So what's it going to be? What are you going to do? Are you going to make up excuses? Are you going to take action, right? Are you going to let life happen to you, or are you going to do life is what I was going to say. But yeah, the choice is yours. You have more power than you realize on the things you can control, and don't worry about the things that you can't control. That's okay. Again, your mind and body are going to be a reflection of your actions. Start today, start small, start simple, but you have to start. Again, listening to this podcast is a good choice of that. I appreciate the feedback, guys. Let's like, comment, share. We're trying to grow. Other than that, till next time.